Okay, welcome back. Next section of Module 2. So it's Module 2, Topic 2, Introductions to Percents. For percents, we talked about percents in Topic 1. A percent is a part to whole ratio where the whole is equal to 100. The percent symbol means per 100 or out of 100. Per is for each, and cent is 100, like centuries, centimeters, or cents. Example 1, we're going to shade 42 squares in the model. We're going to write the percent, fraction, and decimal that represents the shaded portion. So there's 42 squares shaded. The fraction that we would start with would be 42 over 100. We would reduce that because we always reduce fractions when we can, and we do that by dividing by 2, and that's 21 over 50. So as a decimal, there's a couple ways I can do this, but this is 42 100ths. So one way I can do this is just making the last number in the 100 spot of the decimal. The other way I can do the decimal is taking 42 and dividing by 100. 100 cannot go into 42, so I have to put a decimal point in the 0. So now 100 can go into 420, and it goes into that 4 times. That's 400. I subtract. I'm left with 20. I need to add another 0 and bring it down. 100 goes into 200 2 times. 2 times 100 is 200, and I subtract, and I end up with 0. Now for percent, we said this is out of 100, so if I have a decimal, I can take that decimal and multiply it by 100. So I need 2 placeholders here for the 2 zeros, and then 1 times 2, and then 1 times 4. I have 2 decimal places here, 0 here. I add those up, so I need 2 decimal places. So it would be 42%. Okay, example 2, we're going to complete this grid. So first things first, I have to look, and I have 33 shaded squares, and I know there's 100, so that would be 33 over 100. So as a decimal, I would take 33 and divide it by 100. So 100 subtract, add the 0, bring it down, put my decimal point above, so that's 0.33. Now, as a percent, I can take my decimal and multiply it by 100. Since those are zeros, I can put 2 0 placeholders. I have 2 decimal places here, 0 here, add them up, that's 2. So it would be 33, and we have to have the percent sign. So now I need to shade 35.35. So this is the 100th spot. So let's go back to the fraction first. So the 100th spot means I can just take the number and put it over 100. I can shade 35 squares. And then I can take my decimal and multiply it by 100. 2 0 placeholders, 2 decimal places, so it would be 35%. So, I don't know if you're noticing the pattern, but here's 84%. If I take that to a fraction, a percent is always out of 100. And then if I were to reduce it, I could divide by 4, which would give me 21 over 25. $84 divided by 100, add the decimal point and the 0, you get 800, add another 0 and bring it down, so the decimal would be 0.84. And this is going to be a lot of shading here. Shading's not very pretty, but it's there. Okay, so 2/25, we can figure that out what that is. That's the reduced form. So I'm going to take 2 and divide it by 25. I'm going to have to add a decimal and 2 zeros. So I have to have a placeholder here because 25 cannot go into 20. However, 25 does go into 200. 8 times 25 is 200. I subtract and I get 0. So my decimal is 0.08. If I multiplied 0.08 times 100, that's going to be 8%. So what would I shade here? So if it's 8%, that means 8 out of 100. So I can shade 8 squares. Okay, a percent model. This is very similar to a double number line, where we take a number line and we put 100% all the way at the right. The diagram shows that 20 over 80 equals what percent? So our whole here is 80. So that's where we want to line that up with 100%. And then I'm going to divide 80 up into amounts. Here it makes sense to go by 20s. 20, 40, 60. And if I do that, that leaves me with 4 blocks. So 100% divided by 4 would be 25% each. And that's what's going to line up with each one of those 20s. So the diagram shows that 20 over 80 is 25%. 75% is what fraction of the whole? So I'm going to go to 75% and see that lines up with 60. So 60 over 80, or 60 out of 80, is 75%. And then the last one wants to know what 50% of the whole is. 50% of the whole would be 40. Okay, find 75% of 48 by creating a percent model where 48 is 100%. So I need to draw my rectangle. At 100%, that is going to be 48. So can I cut 48 up into 4s? We're going to have zeros here. So 48 divided by 4 is 12. And 100 divided by 4 is 25%. So we have 12, 24, 36, 48. So now it wants to know what 75% of 48 is. So if I go to 75%, 36 lines up. You try it. Complete the grid with the fraction, decimal, and percent.